Lots of storylines going on for the Jaguars in 2025, like every year. But here's the top five for me. Now, number one is obvious, Travis Hunter. I think when it comes to storylines for the Jaguars, there are a lot that we really look at internally, but the Travis Hunter thing is a national storyline, right? If you come out with a top 10, the 20 NFL storylines when it comes to around the league, Travis Hunter is the guy because he's a unicorn. And, there's stuff that happens like you can compare it with the Jaguars. Like, we've seen the new young offensive coordinator become head coach. How is that going to work out? You've seen Trevor Lawrence, the generational guy compared to Elway or Luck. You've seen them get drafted number one overall and had all these expectations. You've seen a lot of different scenarios in the NFL, but you never quite seen a Travis Hunter when it comes to a guy getting drafted that is openly going to be playing offense and defense, right? So, right now he's being viewed to me at least from the vibes I'm getting. He's going to be a full-time wide receiver. That's going to be his number one job. And then his second job is going to be cornerback. And that's something that the Jaguars are going to kind of ease him into. I don't think they want to overload him mentally, although I don't think that Travis Hunter will be mad about that. I think probably sooner rather than later. I think by week 5 or week 6, you're going to see a lot more doses of Travis Hunter just because he's going to be so good. It's going to be hard not to have him on the field. Especially if injuries start to pop up. If Tyson Campbell gets his general week 3 or week 4 injury, then that's going to prop Travis Hunter in there. But how is he going to be able to balance it? Can he truly be a premier wide receiver and a premier cornerback? I was listening to Pete Prisco and Austin Lane, and Austin Lane kind of made an interesting point. And, wide receivers don't get drafted number 2 overall very often. The last guy to get wide receiver to get drafted number 2 is Calvin Johnson. And usually if you're a wide receiver drafted in the top 5, you are looked as the guy. You are the wide receiver. It's going to revolve around you. But the Jaguars drafted Travis Hunter, and Travis Hunter isn't even the best wide receiver on the Jaguars right now, right? It's Brian Thomas Jr. We are getting into this new era, this new stage in the NFL, which it's not necessarily new, but probably in the last 5 to 10 years where you don't need the one premier receiver. You need 2 premier receivers, right? So Brian Thomas Jr. is the guy, a third in NFL in receiving yards last year. You're top 10 in a bunch of other categories when it comes to like passing touchdowns. I don't have the stats in front of me, but he's the guy. And now you have Travis Hunter as the wide receiver too, and you should be able to do some really dynamic things with those two because they're vastly different players, right? You have Brian Thomas Jr., the big, long stride guy, and you have Travis Hunter, the quick, shifty guy, and it should be a lot of fun. I mean, those two on the same offense together should be a lot of fun. But we'll see what Travis Hunter's impact is on defense. I had this dream in my head about him getting an interception on defense and then the next play scoring a receiving touchdown on offense. We'll see when that comes into fruition. Maybe it's not 2025. Maybe it's 26 or 27, but I can't wait for that day. Now, number 2 is just Trevor Lawrence going into year 5. Now, the NFL was kind of sleeping on him in a way, and probably rightfully so. I mean, the 2021 Clemson shine has kind of worn off, and now he's just this quarterback for the Jaguars that there's kind of 2 different the groups or crowds on him. There's a crowd that thinks he sucks, that thinks he's this generational bust, and there's also the crowd like me where I understand that he hasn't necessarily lived up to his expectations, but I also think that the situation that he's been in hasn't been the best, right? That's kind of where I'm at, and I'm not going to try to sway people one way or another. You guys have seen Trevor Lawrence. You guys have your opinions on Trevor Lawrence. But I think one thing that both sides can come together and agree on is that year 5 is a year where there's no more excuses for him, right? And I just pray that the injury bug doesn't hit us because I really don't want to be coming into this time next year and saying, oh, well, the first 3 weeks of the season, the Jaguars lost 3 of their starting offensive linemen. Brian Thomas Jr. got pulled over for a DUI and got, all these different, suspended, just stuff like that. I don't want to sit here and make more excuses for him. Like, we did everything I wanted the Jaguars to do this offseason. I mean, you clean house. You have the young, innovative offensive coach. You have another really good wide receiver in Travis Hunter. You added a lot of speed around him, and and hopefully you develop some kind of run game. But overall, I just hope that the system that we're in, when it comes to the culture from top to bottom, is a place where Trevor Lawrence and just the rest of the roster can succeed, because it definitely doesn't feel like it was like that in 2024. And there was just a little glimmer of the tail end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023 where it seemed like something good was in place. But man, it took a nosedive quick. And, since that ankle injury in 2023, the Jaguars have won 5 games since then. So, yeah, you're going to have to get better. Now, number 3 is, can the Jaguars develop a run game? Now, the Jaguars, when you compare the 2024 Week 1 roster on the offensive line versus the Week 1 2025 offensive line, you have at least 60% of the offensive line being new starters. You have a new center, you have a new right guard, and you have a new left tackle with, Cam Robinson switching over to Walker Little. And you could even have 4. Who knows? Maybe Wyatt Milam can overtake Ezra Cleveland on left guard. And then, the only same starter you have from Week 1 last year is right tackle Anton Harrison, who I still expect to, be starting at right tackle. So, you factor that in. You also know that the Jaguars, I don't think it's anything hidden that the Jaguars wanted to upgrade the running back room. If the Jaguars hadn't made the move up from number 4 to number 5 to number 2, in watching the most recent Hunt video where James Gladstone was walking with Tony Baselli around the practice field, they were on a call with some, I don't know exactly who it was, but he made it sound like yeah, let's make this move up to number 2. We can find a running back later on. So it really sounds like if the Jaguars stayed up 5, it would have been Ashton Genty. And then also later on, I forget who wrote it, but there was an article about a national guy that was in the war room with the Jaguars. The Jaguars wanted R.J. Harvey with their first third-round pick, and he fell off the board, so they weren't able to get him. So the Jaguars were willing to make Travis Hunter the pick at number 2 overall, and the very next pick spending on R.J. Harvey, a running back. Didn't make it, so the Jaguars made a couple moves outside of that. And then now, when you actually look at the draft, the Jaguars came away with 2 running backs in the 2025 NFL draft. And, there's also the Travis Etienne discussion. There's a lot of smoke out there right now about, could he get traded? Are they going to try to move on from him? I haven't seen anything too legit yet, but you guys all know sometimes where there is smoke, there's fire. So it's definitely something to keep paying attention to. I don't think the Jaguars would get much for Travis Etienne, but the Jaguars only want to keep 4 running backs, right? If you have a Tank Bigsby, if you bring on, or maybe they only keep 3 running backs. I don't know. I don't know what the Jaguars want to do roster wise, but if they only keep 3 running backs, you keep Tank Bigsby, you keep on LaQuint Allen and the other Bashal Tootin as your other running back. Maybe they decide to do something with Travis Etienne. We'll see. Most likely keeping 4. Most likely Etienne is here to stay, but I don't know if the future of running back, if the Jaguars RB1 in 2026 is on a roster right now. So, with that said, the Jaguars wanted to improve. They improved on the offensive line. They brought a bunch of new guys in here. They didn't overhaul the running back room, although they were willing to, spend some premium draft position on one. But with all that said, the Jaguars were bottom quarter in rushing in 2023 and 2024. So Cohen is a guy that took the Bucs from a bottom 5 running group to a top 5 running group. So can the Jaguars develop a run game? You would think that with the improvement of the passing game, the running game will improve. Then heck, maybe even with the improvement of the running game, the passing game will also improve. It's something that hopefully the Jaguars get better at, and they need to get better at, because quite frankly, if the Jaguars needed a yard last year, they couldn't get it, and it was pretty embarrassing. The Jaguars couldn't push people. It wasn't very fun. So with that said, number 4, and I made a video about this earlier, can the Jaguars defensive line improve? We got a lot of stuff going on. Josh Hines-Allen gained 30 pounds last year. Can he, now that he's back to his 17.5 sack weight, can that help him out? Trayvon Walker, year 4, hopefully in his final form. Eric Armstead moving to his natural position, and Mason Smith going to into year 2 for himself. We should see hopefully a lot of improvement on the defensive line. And then finally, number 5, it's that will players buy into Liam Cohen's plan? Because if players don't buy into what their coach is selling, the team isn't going to be good. So, and this is something that we're going to have to really look at the entire year to really see if it's happening, because the Jaguars season starts off pretty rough and they have the easy kind of part of the schedule toward the end of the year. Now, granted, it was the same thing in 2024. The Jaguars started off terrible and they ended terrible. They had a bunch of cupcakes on the schedule at the end of the season and they could only manage to beat the Titans, right? So will the players buy into Liam Cohen's plan? If that happens, the Jaguars should be pretty good, because once again, I feel like we had this conversation every year. You look at the AFC South and it's kind of a mess right now. You have the Titans, who I don't expect to be very good this year. You have the Indianapolis Colts. Anthony Richardson is somehow hurt again. I don't know how, but he's hurt again. You have the Texans, the Texans are back-to-back AFC South champions, but I think they took a step back in 2024, and they're a team that I talked about them last week. I don't believe in the run game or the offensive line right now. So I don't know. The AFC South once again seems like it's up for grabs, and can the Jaguars just win the AFC South? I think all it's going to take is 10-7, but you got to be able to beat the Texans. You got to be able to beat your division. So, with all that said, lots of storylines for the Jaguars. Really excited for the year. I feel like I got robbed of the 2024 season. So, should be fun, hopefully, in 2025. But with that said, appreciate all you guys for watching. On your way out, do me a favor, drop a like, and go Jags.